So database cleanup. This is not as exciting as some other things I've done, and I didn't get pictures in here. Okay, so for the last, since August, so what is that, 6-7 months? ILS Ops, the committee that kind of makes decisions about how Horizon is going to work and run, has been voting to do a series of cleanup projects. So I'm just going to go through these projects, give a bit of a background, and sort of tell you what to expect. So where these projects have come from, some of them have been brought by the members of the committee themselves. Some of them have come from help desk tickets, and I'm not seeing Faribault here. And some of them have come up because of the OCLC reclamation project. Because there's one, I was looking for Lisa because there's one that was directly related to her help desk ticket. So when you send in, we do pay attention to those help desk tickets you send in, you know. Sometimes we're able to do things with them. So the borrower record cleanup was approved in August of 2014. There had been much discussion about this over that previous summer. There was a survey that went out about finances and funding levels. But overall, the problem that was brought to us was that the borrower record cleanup as it stood, and this is only for public libraries, was only cleaning up borrowers who had expired 2 or more years and had no unresolved blocks. So even if you were expired for 10 years and you owed 2 cents, or you had a block, a note on your account that said you left the umbrella at the library, come and get it, you were not being deleted. You were still being counted when you guys did your annual counts for your annual reports. And so that was seen as a problem. So the committee, after the discussion, after the survey that I mentioned, decided that this is what it was going to be changed to. So still the first one hasn't changed, right? Still, if you're expired for 2 or more years and have no unresolved blocks. The second one is if you have you're expired for more than 2 years and you have manual blocks. So those are the notes. I have a whole list of them, but mainly they're notes is what you're seeing. And then the last one is the expired for 5 or more years and you have less than $5 in fines. Fines, not losts. So if you have a lost, you're not part of this. So that's what the committee voted on. So what I'm doing is once a quarter, and the next one I'll do in July because I ran behind in April, but we won't talk about that, is that I'll email out a report 2 weeks before the purge date. And then you guys it'll be 3 tabs, right? You've already seen one of these, I think, in December. There's 3 tabs at the bottom that fall into each of those 3 categories. And then if there's somebody on that list, for whatever reason you don't want to be purged, you just add that do not purge block onto their block record. And then 2 weeks later, I'll delete them out. Anybody who does not have that do not purge and falls into that previous report. So public library patrons only, because schools have a different set of criteria for how we purge them out. Any questions on that one? No, okay. So another one that came up last fall in November, again, this is just applying to public library patrons, and this is Beastat Cleanup. So this came up, I was doing some reports and discovered we had thousands of public library patrons who had no CI or no CO Beastat, or who had both, and there's thousands. When that's a problem, because every public library patron must have 1 CI or 1 CO, not 2, not more than 2, just 1 or the other, not 0. So your property tax is either going to the library via your city, and then you're like me and your CI Zumbrota, or your property tax is going to your library via the county, and then your CO 49 for Goodhue County. So your funding levels for your county are based on this, so it's really important, I guess, unless you're the only library in the county, but there's only one of you, right? I think that's only Albert Lea, but you still need to have COs in there, and CIs. So So this I haven't done yet. It'll be coming, I think June is when I'm going to be doing it. I have a calendar. So the report will be sent out to the libraries, and a block will be put on all these patrons' records that says something like clean up the Beastat, check CI, CO, whatever the wording is. And you'll have, again, two kind of tabs at the bottom. One will be the people who have more than one CI or CO, and the other one will be people who are lacking a CI, CO. Again, it's only public library patrons. And then you basically have 3 months to clean this up until the next time I run the report. And then if they're still have that block on there, then this is what we're going to do. So I don't want to do this. So please clean up your records. So if the borrower's address is in a city with an online library, we'll just stick in a CI. And if the borrower's address is not in a city with an online library, we're just going to give you a CO, whatever the appropriate one is. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to send it out in early June. Again, I don't want to have to guess because we all know that people live in the county but have a city mailing address. So I'm not going to guess correctly. We're not going to guess correctly. So you have 3 months to clean it up. So please clean it up when you see that. Any questions about that one? Okay. Expired hold cleanup. The ILS Ops approved this in January of 2015, so just earlier this year. And this one you should have seen come out a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, whatever the first was, I sent it out. So 7 days after an item is checked in at the pickup location, right? You have 7 days to pick up your hold on the hold shelf. It expires, the hold expires, so the item status changes from on hold shelf to E, okay? And then, so each library should be going in once a week, maybe once every 10 days, hopefully, somewhere in there, every day if you're a larger library. You should be checking the report in SERC reports that tells you what's expired on your hold shelf. Then you should be going to your hold shelf and pulling them and checking them in. Now, there's a 7-day delay on when those items are going to show up. So if it went expired today, it actually won't show up on today's report. You would have 7 days before it would show up on the report. So it's because you look confused, Anne. So something's on your hold shelf, and it expires hold after 7 days. You have another 7 days before it's on this report. Okay, so you actually have 14 days before it shows up on this report. And that's because, I assume, some of you hold things for a day or two in case the person's on vacation and you know they're coming in. So that's why the committee wanted the 7-day delay. So if it's confusing, talk to James. He's in the back corner. So.
The other thing was that not every library ran their report every day.
Right.
So it would be possible that if it expired the day after you ran your report, it might show up on your report, SELCO's report, within 7 days, even though you hadn't done your own internal purge yet. So just a way to give libraries more extra time so they don't get a bunch of stuff that they haven't gotten to yet.
So James said that the other reason that the committee voted for a 7-day delay was that not every library runs their expired hold list every day. A lot of the mediums or smaller libraries will wait a few days or do it once a week, and it gives it more of a leeway before when it shows up on the SELCO report. So I think I got the essence of that. So part of this is to say that this report is not meant to replace anything you are already doing. This is just kind of a kick in the butt, right? Like, let's not let this stuff sit around forever, because the longer something's expired hold, the more likely it is to go missing. So that's what this report is really meant to say. Hey, maybe you missed one, not don't run whatever procedure you have and wait for this report to come out. Don't do that. So, because there's a delay. There is a delay there. So the 1st and the 15th of the month, the report is sent out, and the item has to have had a status of expired hold for greater than 7 days. So that's the delay. So hopefully that explains it. So the borrowing location, I kind of put this in the email and the instructions. The borrowing location should check their shelves, and the owning location can contact the borrowing location. But you want to give the borrowing location a chance to check their shelves, so maybe don't do it that very day. So here's where we run into the stick, right? If an item is on the report for 45 or more days, so it's been on 3 reports, and now it's on the 4th one, and the borrowing library has not addressed this issue with the lending library, so you guys have not communicated with each other, somebody's not doing their job. And so in that case, SELCO is going to reimburse the lending library because the borrowing library is not doing their job, so we're just, or the lending, the borrowing library is not doing their job, so the lending library shouldn't be penalized by losing material. So SELCO is going to reimburse the lending library, and then we're going to bill the borrowing library. So remember, you've got 45 days to do something about it, and you just have to communicate with each other and say, hey, I've looked, I don't know what happened to this. And then you're okay. But you need to do something. You can't just ignore that you have another library's stuff sitting at your library expired. Okay, any questions about that? I'm hoping I never get to this point.
How do you want all that documented?
Well, if I get to the 45 days, because we're not there yet, I've only sent out the report once, and there are still stuff on there, I'm just going to email the borrowing and the lending library and say, hey, have you guys talked about this? And then if I don't hear back, then there's a form I've got to fill out with Amy. So
For example, Austin has borrowed something from Prescott, like from Preston, let's say, and it's not around. Nobody knows. It doesn't exist anymore as far as anybody can see. It's in an alternate universe. So then what? What are we supposed to do, and how are you supposed to know?
So Ann has asked what happens if Austin borrows something from Preston and nobody can find it, right? So what do you do now? So the first question would be, if it gets to my 45 days and nobody can find it and it's still expired hold, and you guys have communicated, why is it still expired hold? Why haven't you marked it missing or done something else with it?
So that's the part that we were unclear of with the instructions. So fine, we've communicated, it's not around.
Yeah.
Nobody knows whose fault it is. It's not there. So is it Preston is the one who owns it?
Yeah.
So does Preston go in and mark it missing? What status
Yeah.
exactly do you want, and who makes that change?
So Ann is asking some procedural questions about how you're going to actually say we've looked for this item. You would handle it the same way you're handling it now.
Which is not doing anything.
Then you fall into the category of not doing your job. So, okay, so somebody out there who does do this, do you want to explain what you do? Okay, James, thank you.
Sure. So, procedurally speaking, here's what should happen. If you run your expired hold list.
Oh,
Hey James, why don't you come up and use this mic? I think that's going to be the most effective way to get this on the recording for future reference.
so here, take it from somebody who does this all the time.
So let's say you run your expired hold list, you're Austin, and you've gotten a material from Preston and it shows up on this list. At that point, you know that you have an item and you go and look for it because you're supposed to check it in and send it back to Preston. You can't find it. Maybe it was taken off of your self-holds or whatever. You don't know. At that point, you're supposed to let Preston know, hey, we can't find this. That's normally your responsibility unless this all happens and you get a report. At that point, what Preston is supposed to do on their end is check it in damaged, and then they can switch to missing from there. The reason you check it in damaged is so that it doesn't go into transit somewhere else. Let's say if there's another request on the item. And then Preston should fill out the ILL lost reimbursement form to get replacement for those materials from SELCO. And that's how you're supposed to do it.
But then it shows up, and it gets checked in.
Well, yeah, that's a good
Don't-
question.
don't you
That
tend-
could happen in the case where somebody it didn't actually get scanned on checkout, right? And then let's say they had it for a few weeks and they returned it. You know, I know when we submit for lost items, we wait. We don't do it immediately. You know, I give it like a 1 month delay. But at what point, if an item shows up 4 months later and you've already replaced the material, why should you have to pay it back? I mean, 4 months at that point, then, you know, it's just, you chalk it up to, you know, just a mistake. I think that's, you know, I think the idea here, and ILS Ops really pushed on this, is that you want libraries to get their material back. They've loaned it to you. They've done their job. If it's not found, they need to replace it so that they can have it available again for their own borrowers as soon as possible.
Right, absolutely, I'm 100% behind it. I just think that it's a really awkward, that we could assume that everyone has looked, and at a certain time, just reimburse those libraries for that cost. No forms, no paperwork, no emailing back and forth.
I think that is an excellent thing that you can bring up at next ILS Ops.
You know, the other thing too that you can do is if you're worried that the material will show up again, just contact the patron whom the item had been
We
on hold for. So even though it's expired, maybe they grabbed it. But then at that point, you just have to assume it's lost. I mean, you can't do anything else in the.
So the upshot is, don't mess with the borrowing library does not change any statuses. They leave that to the owner.
You should not be in general. It's not
Right,
your
right,
stuff,
right.
so.
Yeah. Yep, and the lending library should check it in damage and then switch it to missing or replacement order, depending on if they're actually going to replace it or not.
And if
So
you,
then my other question is that, because this happens a lot, is because people work on different schedules, and so the lending library then really should not be going around looking for all that stuff. It's the borrowing library who's supposed to be initiating those calls.
well, it's probably not an awful thing to check your own shelves just to make sure, but, I mean, yeah, because
No, I don't
sometimes.
mean
Right.
that. I mean, so we get, you know, sometimes an email will come, you know, this has been, you know, check for this or whatever, and, or the all points bulletin will go out, and, you know, check everywhere for such and such a thing, and I never really understand those. Where they want everybody. Yeah, where they
So
want
I think
everybody.
we're wandering into a different conversation here, and I kind of want to get back
Okay,
on,
sorry.
because we have other topics to discuss. But if we get to thanks, James. If we get to the 45 days, and I email the borrowing library or the lending library, now I'm looking at Beth because she said Preston, so I can't. And you guys say, yeah, we've been in communication. I think it might show up in a week, so I'm leaving it expired hold. That's fine. I'm not going to then go and bill. If you guys have worked something out amongst yourselves, that's great. But if there has been no communication, that's when this is going to become an issue. Okay?
So how does the school fall into this 45 days?
It's the same for the schools. We did have that discussion at ILS Ops, like how this was going to affect the schools. And basically, I mean, if the schools show up when I'm doing the end of June report or the beginning of July report, I can't communicate with you because you're not there. So it's going to wait until the fall, if that makes sense. So just during the summer, there'll be kind of a lull for you guys. So, okay. Any other questions about this one? All right. So one went out on the 1st, one went out on the 15th, or will go out on Friday.
And who are those going to?
I've been sending them to the con pubs, so in the con schools. So those are the automation contacts. Sorry, Bonnie asked who they were being sent to.
So you guys.
Yeah. So. Okay, so maybe this helps Anne. Sherry,
Just a clarification, all the reports go to Confog.
that's where I've been sending all, yes. Sherry asked if all the reports have been going to Conpub. Yes, I've been sending all of them to Conpub, Con School, And I think the first time I send them out to the DERs as well. So DER school and DER pub. So, okay, any other questions? Expired, hold, cleanup, okay. All right. Right, so just remember you can go into SERC reports and see what's on your hold shelf. You can go into Web Reporter and see your items on other libraries' hold shelves. So I think this is the last one. This one was, yes, it must be because we haven't met in April. So this was approved in March, and this is about long in transit items. So these are kind of items that have been stuck in transit for quite a while. Excuse me, we have 2 in transit statuses that you're probably used to seeing that this report is affecting. TR are items going home, right, returning to their owning location. TH are filling requests, and because Horizon likes to confuse you, it displays it in 2 ways. Transit hold if you're looking at a borrower record, or like your holds lists, and then transit request if you're in the item record. So, but they are the same thing. They're going to fill a hold. And so I ran this report in early March for ILS Ops, and we had 6,170 items in the status of TR. Luckily, TH was a little better. But you can see that 35, over a third of them, had been in transit for longer than a month. And this was in March, so just under a third of them had been in transit since before January 1st. And then 20% of them, so 1 out of 5, had been in transit for well over a year. So that's not good. This is the one I was looking for Lisa for because she actually submitted a help desk ticket and said, my patron's looking for this item, and when I look, it says it's been in transit since 2008, and my patron came in and wanted to know when she was going to be able to get this. And she's like, is there any kind of cleanup? And I'm like, no, we really rely on everybody to use Item Reporter to go in, or Web Reporter, and clean up their own stuff, and clearly that's not happening everywhere. So again, once a quarter, and this was adjusted. Originally I was going to do it January, April, but then the ILS Ops Committee wanted to adjust it for the schools. So once a quarter, and I think I sent this one out yesterday. Yeah, so any items with these statuses and that last status update date is prior to the previous quarter, we're going to change them to missing. And then eventually they'll get deleted out when we clean up the missings. Rhonda has a question.
May I make a request?
Sure.
When people send out an email in communication back and forth, that they not only just send the title, but they send the call number, what their call number looks like on their book, and the barcode. It really helps a lot.
Okay, Rhonda has made a request that when you send out, are you talking about the all call emails that people send out?
Well, no, like if Beth sent me an email that says, Rhonda, would you please look for this book by this author? And if she put the call number and the barcode number,
Okay.
that really, because I might not be the person looking for it.
Sure.
It may be in aid or whoever
Sure.
around.
So Rhonda is requesting that if you send an email saying, please look for this item, that you include the barcode and the call number. So, yeah. So I can certainly pass that request on.
I mean,
So,
do other people feel like this too?
Makes it go faster.
so.
It does. And then
The person doing it usually has it in front of them anyway.
Okay, so I have to get moving because I think I'm like 20 minutes over time here. So again, don't wait for this quarterly report. Take care of your own stuff stuck in transit. Use Item Reporter. And if you don't know how to use Item Reporter, contact the help desk. Here are a couple other reports that we do. Some of them you've seen, right? Local requests and the notices for review. I do delete your withdrawn items monthly, and we do clean up missing items. So, and I do send reports out for these. So it's been a while since I've done the missing one, but we'll do that again in the fall. Okay, hopefully there's no more questions. Okay, good. I'll see you guys later.